All right, so I'm live. I assume I'm live. I haven't done this in so long. I haven't done a live stream in about 2-3 years now. This is really clear, though. I'm freaking happy with this. Okay, so I want to do a quick review of Powers of X and House of X for comic books. Now, oh man, I am a huge comic book fan. I probably started reading comics like as the first form of media ever. Other than maybe like, no, it was probably comic books and Tintin. I also include that as comic books. And I got into Spider-Man, X-Men, Batman, all that kind of stuff when I was younger, up until I was probably like 13 or 14. Then I stopped reading comics, got back into them a few years ago in 2011, but I only probably read them for about a year, then got out of them again. And then with this movie, Infinity War, which I just rewatched last night, basically this brought back my entire love. I continued loving the MCU for ever since Iron Man 1, pretty much. But this movie made me want to read comic books again. So I got back into it, and I just recently rewatched this one and Endgame last night. And watching these back to back is the way to watch these movies. My God, it is essentially one big movie with two parts. They did such a great job with these movies, and they look so nice too. Like that's just freaking gorgeous. This looks like a comic book photo image, like cover. So started getting back into comics, reading Omnibus mainly because Omnibus is my favorite format to read it in. It's massive. It's oversized hardcover. It's my kind of stuff. Hello, Kevin. I'm going to be talking about spoilers for these comic books, but and I think that you actually should read them. Does it look clear? I assume it looks exactly as I'm seeing it. I also hope that the audio is okay. You can hear me. Good enough for me. So yes, there's going to be spoilers regarding these comic books that I think you actually should read. There's only 4 of them out so far. Well, actually 5, because there's also Absolute Carnage that I want to be talking about eventually. But I'll spoil these a little bit. For right now, though, I'll try to do a non-spoiler review of these. No, because I'll do non-spoiler right now. So House of X is what first started this. I think it's the first one that started this. I should go double check that. Yeah, House of X on July 24th. This is Jonathan Hickman. And this is the first time in like years. So I've been collecting comic books again, but only in hardcovers like trade paperbacks or omnibus, that kind of thing. This is the first time since going back to comics that I've actually gotten back getting single issues. I don't know if I'm just going to do this for House of X, Powers of X, and Absolute Carnage, basically the big events that are happening at the moment. You have jelly beans, regular rippled chips, and a Pepsi. Why would you mention all of this now? I literally have water. That's all I have. I'm trying to be healthy. Jelly beans would be good right now, though. Yeah, or vanilla Coke. That'd be good. Totally unrelated, but I went to Wendy's the other day. And Wendy's, so in Canada, it's almost impossible to get vanilla Coke, other than maybe where you are. In Toronto, I think that it might still be possible. And you're also being healthy by having all of that? I don't know, dude. But anyway, at Wendy's, you can go and they now have it so that they don't fill out the pop. You actually go out and fill it up. And so I was looking at all the different options that they had, and I was like, vanilla Coke. It was a little bit, as a fountain drink, it was a little bit too much of a vanilla flavor. So what I would do is probably have half of it just regular Coca-Cola and the other half vanilla Coke. It's delicious. Anyway, this has nothing to do with anything. Don't fight it. I don't have any jelly beans in my house. I don't have any chips in my house, and I don't have any Pepsi in my house. So I don't have any good. I think I have maybe chocolate chip cookies would probably be the worst thing that I could have. Although I could just go get a donut from Tim Hortons but it's like 718. So vanilla Pepsi, like fast food places, is hit and miss, but cases are available. You can actually get that's vanilla Pepsi. I didn't even know Pepsi had made a vanilla version. Did they have a cherry Pepsi? I don't actually like cherry Coke, but I know that a lot of people do. Yeah, this is true. Tim Hortons is probably, I'd say, a 3-minute drive from my place. Maybe 2.5 if I hit the lights. I mean, there's only one light before I get to it. But anyway, so basically everybody started talking about House of X, Powers of X, and I saw I think an ad for Absolute Carnage, because Google obviously pays attention to what I like and keeps seeing that I keep looking at comic books. So it's the first time I'd actually ever seen something for comics. I was like, that's an event. That seems kind of fun. I wouldn't mind maybe getting back into getting single issues for that. And these books also, normally they're much smaller. This is $8 US, and it's oh, I mean, you can't really tell, but it's a lot thicker than it normally is. This is much, I don't know, 2-3 times the size of a regular issue. I don't know. I haven't read Absolute Carnage yet. That's going to be, I'm going to read that tonight. I was basically just focusing on House of X and Powers of X, and that's what we're going to talk about now. I did cherry vanilla Pepsi. Oh God, that doesn't sound good. I'll stop distracting now. You can, no, I like being able to interact with people. It's a lot funner for me. So, House of X starts this event off, and Powers of X is related to it as well. Now, I don't own Powers of X 1. I did read it, and I did order it. I went to a local comic book shop, and I should have it by next week, but I already did read it. So I kind of I know what's going on. So what happens with House of X and Powers of X? They follow. So first of all is House of X. Then it was followed by Powers of X 1, and then House of X 2, and then Powers of X 2, and they all follow. There is a bit of a difference though. House of X, I am enjoying a lot more than Powers of X because it's just easier to read. For the most part, they're staying in the present, because what they're doing with this is that they're going year 1 in the X-Men, year 10 in the X-Men, which is kind of the present time, year 100 in the X-Men, which, I mean, that's X-Men, so they're going to be doing some time stuff, and then year 1000 in the X-Men. Honestly, year 10 is the best stuff. Year 1 has some interesting things. Year 100 has some interesting things. And year 1000, I have no idea what's going on. Other than at the very end of Powers of X 2, I kind of got a better idea. I also have the variant cover. I was kind of, this is all that they had when I went. Now, I went to the comic book store. That's the one thing. I'm close to everything in town, but I don't have a local comic book store. I have to go about half an hour worth of a drive to get to my local comic book store. So that's why I didn't get these right away. And then I said, okay, instead of just me coming in every week and trying to hopefully getting a copy, I asked if they could order me some. So I'm now subscribed to Powers of X, House of X, and Absolute Carnage. And I might honestly continue with X-Men, because X-Men is getting restarted, and it is going to be Jonathan Hickman, so he's going to kind of continue his run after these. So that's kind of cool. Also, I think this one is a second printing as well, which that kind of sucks. But I honestly, I'm happy I have this in comic book form, and I'll probably honestly get the hardcover down the road, or if there's enough material, because I don't know if this is crossing over with any other titles at the moment. I know Absolute Carnage is. I don't know if these are. If they are, then they might have enough to maybe put out an omnibus. That'd probably be a small omnibus. 12 issues, and they are thicker. That's the other thing too, is that right now these are thicker issues as well. I think there's something like, these ones are close to like 45 pages or something like that, and Absolute Carnage does feel a lot thicker than that. Yeah, you can kind of tell. So this is House of X and Absolute Carnage. You can kind of see. I can't see though. They kind of look the same, but we're a lot. Absolute, it looks a lot bigger. House of Generation X. Yes, Jonathan Hickman is starting a new series about Triple H and Shawn Michaels, and there actually was comic books of at least The Undertaker, and my brother had that copy. I think that there's been a few that have actually gone from wrestlers that have had comic books. Anyway, so House of X, for the most part, is staying in the present, especially the first issue. Then we had Powers of X, and that kind of showed us like the year 1, year 10, year 100, year 1000. Then we went to House of X 2, and by far these are the two that I enjoyed the most. Yeah, X-Pac as well. We want to forget X-Pac. And in this issue, everybody was freaking out because they brought back Moira McTaggart, I believe is her name. I only know her from the TV show. I really didn't see her in any of the comics that I was reading at the time in the 90s or in 2011, 2012 when I was reading comic books. So I only know her from the 90s animated TV show. And they made her quite interesting. I really enjoyed this one, but I also will say that I House of X 1 as well. Powers 1 and 2 they're okay. They're interesting, but they're not as good as House of X. And the other thing too that I don't know if this is something Jonathan Hickman does a lot. I don't think I ever read any of his stuff. I don't think I did. But what he's doing is throughout these books is that so you'll have obviously your regular comic book stuff, but then he'll have every once in a while a lot of dialogue and reading, kind of explaining everything that's kind of going on. So they'll talk about something, and I won't really know what the heck's going on. In the beginning, they're on this island, Koa. Is that how you pronounce it? Give me a second. Also, Charles Xavier looks so weird like this. I think this is how he's been looking for the last little while, potentially. I honestly don't know because I'm not caught up at all. My hopes is that I will be starting to get caught up after this by going back and reading stuff. But Krakoa, I think that's how you pronounce it. Yeah, so at the very beginning, we kind of see that there's a bunch of flowers, and I was like, what's the significance of this? Is this some kind of peace treaty of some kind? I had no idea what the significance was. And then a few issues later, they kind of give you what the heck is going on. And then I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. This is kind of new. And I like it when it's something very small like this. When it's like a wall of text like this, it's kind of like we're getting notes from like, I don't know, like a military. Actually, it makes sense because later on in Powers of X, although in Powers of X 1 and 2, both of them, they're basically stealing information. And in Powers of X 2, they're in the future and they steal information from like the history of the machines, Sentinels and all that kind of stuff. To me, it would be regarded like this. So they're fishing for information. And it would be kind of maybe read like this to a degree. So yeah, there hasn't really been any big fights in any of the issues so far. I would say that the one that we were the closest to getting some fights would have been House of X at the midway through. No, that wasn't even really a battle. They're just jumping around and escaping. There was like a 2-second battle maybe. And then in Powers of X 2, there was quite a bit of battles, although very short term, with Moira. What to the death? To the death of what do you mean by that? So now I will go into some spoilers for these books, although really nothing big has happened. Well, okay, one big thing has happened since then. I would say that the only issue that has a lot of spoilers is House of X 2. So House of X 1, basically Magneto is with Charles Xavier, and like I said, Charles Xavier looking like this, Professor X, I don't trust him. It's really weird. I should trust him. And because I'm also reading like what their plan is, we're kind of seeing what their plan is. He just like that to me screams bad guy. right? Like that's a villain. That is a guy that has ulterior motives, and maybe he does because of what's been going on. So basically, all the mutants are on this island called Krakoa, and they're all planting these flowers, and they're on Mars and different places. And what they can do with some of these flowers is that they can. There's a few different things that the flowers can do. One of them is they can extend human life by 5 years. Another one is that they can create portals. So that's why they have all of these flowers where you can basically transport yourself. Only mutants can transport themselves, but I think they can also transport. Yeah, they can transport other people if a mutant is present with them to go to any place where the other flower would be planted. There's another flower that can create pills that basically rid you of like Alzheimer's or like basically mind illnesses. There's a few other flowers as well. The gateways I talked about, habitat. So yeah, obviously, this flower produces a habitat. A habitat is a self-sustaining environment, a biome that is part of the interconnected consciousness of Krakoa. And then there's another one that's a no place. That's like the black, like you can see it right there. That I don't know. Anyway, so there's for humans, there's a bunch of different things, and what Charles Xavier and Magneto want to do, because they're teamed up together, and Magneto's suit in this is so badass. Like I love how he looks there in his silverish white suit. It's very. I mean, you kind of saw that with was it X-Men First Class? Kind of like his suit was kind of like white and silver. It is rad. So anyway, what they're doing is they want to basically have a peace treaty with Earth to basically leave them be, and that's always the thing with X-Men. And they're going to live. All the mutants are going to live on Krakoa, and in exchange for this, they are going to give them the benefits of these flowers. So like human life will be extended by 5 years. Mind illnesses will be a thing of the past. And there's another thing too. I don't know if it's like they can heal or something like that. Trying to see what else happens in this. I don't know if there's anything else worth mentioning. The first issue of House of X. Then we have, this is the part where I said that there's a little bit of action, but it's not really a battle. We see Mystique, Toad, and Sabretooth going into this place and stealing some information. Fantastic Four shows up. Sabretooth gets like clobbered in 2 seconds by the Thing, which he should. And then we kind of also hear the human. There's ambassadors there. They're talking to Magneto, while at the same time they are being they're having their minds read, and they kind of, basically making everything to them. And also at the very end, we see Cyclops show up, says, okay, I'm just going to take Sabretooth and get out of here. Fantastic Four is like, no, that's not going to happen. And then they kind of have it set up that like, there's a problem with this. And I expected a battle. And you can almost see the stance that you'd get, that we're about to have a rumble. But then Cyclops is just like, we're good. We're not actually going to go with the battle. We'll figure this out later. I thought that was pretty cool. And then he also says at the very end, oh, and by the way, whenever your son's ready, he has a place for his actual family. I thought that was kind of a nice thing to say because their son is a mutant. I read Powers of X, which I said I don't actually own yet. I will have that next week. That was interesting. We had Moira meet up with Charles Xavier in year 1. They had some stuff with the year 100 and year 1000. In year 1000, we see Nimrod around. Or no, is that year 100? That might be year 100. Nimrod is still around in year 1000, but he's like just this like little speck of something. He's not like the entire thing that he normally is. Then in House of X2, which is the biggest spoilers of this series so far, is that Moira is actually you are Nimrod. Cyclops is a bitch, but you've also probably never, like, if you haven't read any of the comics, there's a lot more layers to him than what they've shown in all the movies. Like they did Cyclops could have been so awesome. Like the most that we've seen him, and actually I haven't seen Dark Phoenix yet, but Cyclops in X-Men 1 is probably the the most we've seen from him. And then X-Men 2, he's barely in it. X-Men 3, they kill him off. Like, such a disservice to that character. And I always really liked Cyclops. I based most of what I knew from Cyclops at the time, though, off the animated series, like I did for most of the stuff. Anyway, Moira is a mutant, and she's been in the X-Men comics before, and just as a human. And what her superpower, what her mutant power is that she can keep getting reborn. And I thought this was very interesting. Yeah, here's a bunch of like dialogue that we kind of see, or just more information. It's interesting, but it's a lot to read sometimes when I just want to kind of get to the next page and follow along the story. And what we see with this is that she basically goes through a bunch of different lives, and Professor X is there sometimes, Professor X is not there sometimes. She doesn't like him at the beginning, but then eventually in one of her lives she ends up falling in love with him. And she also thinks that she doesn't want this power anymore. She does not. She thinks that being mutant is a cancer. So she takes one of her lives to work on a cure. When that happens, we end up getting Destiny and Mystique kind of show up, and they kill all the scientists that were working on it. And then Destiny, who can her power is to see the future. She basically says that, okay, I can see the future, and I knew that you were going to plan to do this, or I saw that you would have used this, and I understand that you had good purposes. That's how everything starts. Everything has a good idea, but people can use certain things for negative things. They're always going to exploit something. And Mystique also, yeah, Mystique's pretty badass too. There's a lot of characters that are really cool in the X-Men. I actually really like Destiny, and because of what happened in this too. So anyway, Destiny doesn't want, and Mystique obviously doesn't want this to happen. So Destiny explains everything and says that I see your future. Ian, you're very hard to figure this out because you can have so many lives, but I can see that you have like maybe 11 lives tops or something like that, and 12 or 13 if you're lucky, maybe. Because this will eventually end, because at 13 years old is when she actually got her mutant powers, and Destiny basically sees that this will run out eventually. She will not just be able to be reincarnating herself and living all these different lives. And anytime that she tries to find a cure for this, Destiny and Mystique will always show up, or at least Destiny, because Destiny can always see the future. And as soon as she gets close to creating this cure, she'll show up, kill her, and everybody around her. And then she ends up, and she says, so there's no point. So you're either going to have to keep dying, and she kills her in a very horrible death where she's like, burn her slowly so she remembers this, or change. So then she says, okay, well then maybe so then Moira's obviously like, I have no choice. So then she says, okay, well then I'm going to join Charles Xavier. She goes through all the different versions of the X-Men. So you have the original Stan Lee and Jack Kirby version, the Claremont era, Uncanny X-Men, basically all the different eras, and it always ends up that she ends up dying from the Sentinels. They always show up. So then she's like, okay, well I can't do that. So then I'm going to go tell Charles Xavier when we're much younger, and then that completely changes him, and he sees everything that's going on. So that changes him. Then she's like, screw that, that doesn't work either. So now she becomes an assassin, kills all the Trask family, who was the ones that create the Sentinels. I was like, oh, she went total Punisher, which was badass. I feel that they could have almost gone a little bit more into detail for each of her lives, or some of her lives, and I think it would be really cool to see not even what ifs, because they technically they have happened. They would be still canon. It's just that then they would get reset, right, each time. I think that there's a lot of interesting stories that they could have really gone on with all of these different lives, like seeing her being there with the X-Men, just maybe have like a 12-issue miniseries or something like that. Same thing for when she goes around as Punisher, kind of killing all the Trask family, like seeing her psyche of being like reborn in that life and be like, I have no choice. I tried it Charles Xavier's way, both ways. Going to him, being there with the X-Men did not work. Going there and changing his views very early on and changing him radically did not work either. So now she's like, I have no choice. I'm going to have to be merciless and just kill this entire family. Like, that's brutal. And they kind of just did it with this one page. But I wish they would have gone a little bit further than that. But then just because that she killed Trask, who created the Sentinels, doesn't mean that the Sentinels won't exist still. At some point later on, somebody else created it, because it's all heading towards that. It's basically inevitable, as Thanos would say, and it's not 1 in 14 million. Maybe there's a 1 in 14 million where you can avoid it, but by the sounds of it, Hickman is saying that it will happen no matter what. The Sentinels will happen. So she's like, okay, that doesn't work. So then I'm going to go to Magneto, because he's on the other extreme side. That doesn't work either. She tells it to Magneto, and basically all of the Marvel superheroes show up and like take him down. And then she dies a few years later. So then she's like, okay, I'm going to go even further than that and go with Apocalypse. I loved this. Still, Apocalypse was not enough. So then she's like, okay, now I'm going to try something completely different. And they go back to Powers of X1, where she meets up with Charles Xavier. And then that's where that issue ends off. And then when we get, this to me is the interesting stuff that he added in these comics, is her time, all her different lives, the timelines of them, and kind of everything that happened. Yeah, I wish I was an assassin either. Actually, no. I mean, as cool as it would be to have those kinds of skills, just being ruthless and killing people, I don't think I'd enjoy that. Having those skills would be badass, but yeah, not actually going down that route. So you get to see kind of the first 2 pages were when she was younger, under 13. Then it's like her teenage years, up until she's like 27. And you see that her first life is very boring. She died at 74. She was married. She had 3 kids. It was a good life, but nothing amazing. And then just basically all her deaths, as you can see, like for the most part, at the beginning, she had a chance of living long, and then after that, she just kept dying a lot earlier. One of them, she dies a lot earlier, even before that. I think she died in a plane crash in one of them, which was like, I think she lived her first 2 lives. Her second life, when she realized that she like actually had a second life, she's like, okay, now I need to go see Charles Xavier. So on the plane ride to there, she dies because it landed in the ocean. I thought that was, I actually laughed quite a bit at that. So that's it for House of X2. I also love this cover. This is a really nice cover. Once again, more so because of Magneto there again. Apocalypse looks freaking awesome. And then all the different versions of Moira. And she does look different each time, too. You want the money, I guess. That's the other thing, too, right? Like, it's really strange that at no point she thought, why don't I just be like super rich in one of her lives? That's what I would have done, definitely. I also don't live in a land that has superheroes and mutants. And like if I found out I was a mutant, I could just live forever. They did say that when she went to her husband from her first life, that she couldn't fall in love with him again because she knew all of his flaws, and that he wouldn't change at all. Like she had tried to, like, and any of those flaws that were there the first time are going to be there again the second time, and she could see that in her second life. So she wasn't able to fall in love with him and never have those 3 kids again, because she always knew what would happen. Like she pretty much, she tested it out, and she said that if she did kind of the same things that she did in her first life, she could get the same occurrences and events to happen as they did in her first life. But she couldn't fall in love with her husband. So I would be like, okay, well, I guess if you were really in love with that person in your first life, then you would try to stick with that and try to fix this with. So I guess it makes sense, but I would just be like, okay, I'll try to live a different life. You get to live a bunch of different lives, right? And I would try to be rich. I would waste one of my lives on that. She's much more ambitious than I am, though. She always tries to fix things. And now with the latest one, Powers of X 2, which just came out yesterday. This one, once again, because it's powers, they kind of go back and forth. So we see in year 1. So now we get to see what Charles Xavier and Moira are going to do in her base. I think she's in her 11th life now, after all these tries. And that's kind of where the House of X and Powers of X is leading to, I believe. And so they basically said that they are going to change things completely like they've never done before. And that is having Charles Xavier and Magneto in year one meeting up and becoming partners right from the beginning, because that's their only chance. And Magneto is one of the most interesting characters, and I love it when he's on like he's an anti-hero, and he basically says that he'll do this only if he can basically, as soon as Charles gets weak, he's going to be there to put him in line. Charles says, I would expect nothing less. So this is kind of a darker Charles Xavier, and we're probably going to get a nicer Magneto to a degree, which is always fun when they reverse roles a little bit. And that's what I feel like, because we're still seeing Charles Xavier when he's young still being nice, but then when he's like this dude, like I don't trust him. I think he's going to be so much darker than him. I don't know, maybe he won't be. So then in this, we also go to the 100 years in the future. Also, really different. 100 years in the future, Wolverine is still alive. That makes sense because of his healing abilities. But they also had Magneto was still alive. It looked like Magneto, much older Magneto with a beard and stuff. And I don't think that's possible. Like, Magneto can't be that old. Only Wolverine makes sense, but the other one didn't. And then we see that in 100 years in the future, they are working with Apocalypse right now. Also, that's kind of cool as well. I like it when we have these enemies that join the side of the good guys. That's always one of my favorite, storylines that you can have in almost any form of media. Nimrod's there. I think that's still the present. He kills a bunch of people. And what they think of in the present actually right now is that what they need to go do is what they had stolen, what Mystique and Sabretooth and Toad had stolen in House of X1, was information about this Xavier the Grey. Xavier the Grey and Dennis Rod. Did you write Rodnim? Nicely done, Kevin. What they think is happening, what they stole information from, was a bunch of people that were working for different organizations that really hate mutants got together and have been working on something, I think in space. And Cyclops, Professor X, and Magneto tell Cyclops that they need to go have this assault on this place because what they think is going to be created is something far beyond the Sentinels. And then Cyclops is like, well, what else could they make? Like, they're already so powerful, and then they think it's Nimrod. And he's like, oh, that's different than just normal Sentinels. Yeah, let's do this. And they say, like, okay, is it going to be insanely difficult because it's in space and it's people that are like almost prepared for them, that hate mutants? And Cyclops says it'll get done. I like that about Cyclops. I like moments like that. Anyway, Wolverine just looks like so badass, and he's in his old, well, not his old. I find it's his old school, but it's his brown suit, not the yellow and blue. It's more his yellowish brown and brown suit, and he always looks freaking awesome. So they're going to be using Apocalypse to do something else 100 years in the future, and then we go 1,000 years in the future, and we kind of get what is left of Nimrod and these other characters who I don't know who they are, honestly. I don't know if these are were shown before in other comics other than these. But they did something where I think that they made Nimrod a world mind, and that's very I'll get to that in a second. And then they see these things called phalanx, and I like this looks familiar to me, but I feel that there was a face in that, so I might be thinking of something completely different. Maybe I'm thinking of a Celestial or something like that. But this character shows up, says that they're the phalanx, and that they ate their world mind or something, and they're here to talk to them, and they want to know what they want, and then they say they want ascension. And that's where it ends, but then we get the types of societies that they have. And they kind of go into this, like hive minds and all that kind of stuff. World minds, phalanx, which is like like a million minds put together. And what phalanx, or they kind of explain what phalanx do with more writing like this, is that they go around and they just consume, I guess, beings and things like that. If they're worthy, if there's something that they can use from them, they will they'll ascend them into them, kind of thing. And if they're not, then they'll turn them into technarch. It's like, I don't understand half of this. If they're not worthy, then they're going to turn them into a technarch, and then the technarch will rebuild and reprogram stuff. From what I gather, you don't want to be a technarch, and then you don't know also you don't know that if you're a technarch, you don't understand that you're being used by the phalanx for this. I mean, I just finished reading this like maybe half an hour ago as well, so it's all fresh in my mind, but I didn't have time to go look up anything because I wanted to do this live stream and I wanted to set up my webcam and everything. So it's a little bit much, but it's still very interesting. And I think that more issues into it, we'll start kind of see stuff. So what I think that they're heading towards is that we're going to have Magneto and Cyclops do things in the present, which is year 10 for the X-Men, where they take on and they try to avoid having Nimrod created. The biggest thing that could happen at the end of that, obviously, would be if they succeed and they cancel out the idea of Nimrod. But Nimrod might be inevitable as well, and I think that would be kind of cool, getting to the end of this and seeing that there's, no matter what you do, it's inevitable, and that you still have to live with that. And then that'll start the X-Men #1 with a Nimrod being created or still going to be created, and that they failed. That I think would be kind of interesting, because I mean, if they stop Nimrod completely, Nimrod would be not in any of the comics anymore. But then you also have stuff that's happening in the 100 years and 1,000 years, and I really have no idea how they're going to intertwine all of this at some point. Well, this is what happened when I don't sleep like a human amount of sleep. I like the Sentinels. Spider hive mind is my nightmare. What's a spider hive mind? I don't even know what that means. I mean, I hate spiders. Spiders don't think cohesively like that. I think bees are the only thing. Ants, maybe. Bees definitely do. They have a hive mind. I think ants do as well. I don't think spiders do, because you don't see spiders working together. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this right now. Like, if you had to, I feel though that if you wanted to get into this, you'd have to read both. Powers, like I said, is a little harder to read, but there's still good stuff in there, definitely. And it is interesting to see where they're going to be going and progressing with the 100 years and 1,000 years. Yeah, because I don't know what they're going to do in the, well, Apocalypse is planning, I think, an assault as well. In 1,000 years, we're going to see if they're going to be ascended into the phalanx. I'm probably mispronouncing that completely, but I feel that year 10 is probably the most interesting one. Excellent. I have nothing to worry about. You don't have to worry about a bunch of spiders working together, and working together and trying to take over your house or something like that. That's not how they operate, as far as I know. And I hate spiders a lot. So actually, they don't work in a hive mind, but they can live together, because I had a I have a family cottage that we have to put our dock in the summer, and then that's moving a lot. Has my camera been moving a lot when I move, or is that just recently? I'll burn my house down before I allow that, right? I feel the exact same way, actually. But so I have to install. We have to put the dock into the water at the beginning of spring, take it out at the end of summer or fall. And one time we waited a little bit too long in the fall, so my brother had actually gone into the water, and we said, okay, instead of just lifting it, why don't we just take it and drop it in the water, and then swim it to shore, basically, because it would make it a little bit easier. So we decided to do that. We lift it, we put it in the water. As soon as it hits the water, like 40 dock spiders come out, and dock spiders don't swim. They don't have to swim because they don't go in the water. They are able to walk on the water. It is the creepiest thing that I've ever seen. It was my brother who's in the water. It's like September or October at this point, just starts swimming away from it because he's freaking out, and I would too. That's it was like they're walking around everywhere. I'm on shore. I start backing up. I'm like, and I'm terrified of spiders, especially dock spiders. Regular spiders are not too bad. Like if they're this size, they don't bug me too much. But dock spiders, when they're this big, when they have, some dock spiders can have hair. When they have hair, that's wrong. That's just so wrong. So dock spiders are about this big, depending. I mean, there are some of them that were much smaller, but some of them were about that big. And I'm seeing one would freak me out. I'm backing up, and I'm like, Dad, this is not good. And he's like, no, don't worry. So he kicks one away, kicks another away, and then like 10 more show up on the shore, like walking towards us, like, yeah, this is a lot. And he starts backing up. And my dad is not afraid of spiders at all. He's afraid of snakes, but not spiders. And yeah, it was even too much for him. I honestly don't remember what we did afterwards, like, because I was, this was like 10 years ago. So I was like 22, 23 or something like that. I was like terrified at that point. I have no idea what we did. I think we probably waited maybe 20 minutes or something, and then we went back. But then it was just knowing that there's now 40 dock spiders that don't have a home and could potentially go to the cottages that we live in, right? And sleep in. It was a good time. We actually didn't end up seeing them again, which was really good. But still, that was a horrible experience for me. Yeah, no, docks are not a good idea, man. They unless you maybe, there's different sprays that you can get, but I don't know if there's anything that you could work on a dock. I know we spray our cottages with this kind of spray. Like under the beds and all that kind of stuff, and like in certain areas in the cottage where we think that they might try to get in, because we'll once in a while have a dock spider in the cottage, or because I don't want to find them. But yeah, dock spiders are horrible. So you might be able to get this spray for like a dock as well, and maybe that would work. But yeah, docks. That's why they're called dock spiders, man. Whew. That went completely off track. Oh God. So I'm really enjoying House of X and Powers of X. Just to come to a close, I'm really enjoying having comic books again. I just don't want to have basically, like last time that I did this in 2011, 2012, I was reading probably 10 different, 12, maybe 12 different issues, like 12 different series. And it was like almost too much to have in single issues. Because what's going to happen, I know, is I'm going to eventually get them in oversized hardcovers, hopefully in an omnibus format, because that's what I prefer to read them in. I prefer having, an entire book with 30, 40 comics, as opposed to going back. Like, let's say if I want to read a specific run again, I don't want to go back and get all these single issues again. Like finding where they all are and stored, because if I keep collecting, I'll have like tons, and like space is very important for me. And for comic books like this, you can't really have them on a shelf. What you do is, I just recently picked up one of these. I mean, I basically stored them in different boxes before, but I thought that I saw this and I was like, oh, that's kind of funner. So I got this, so I'll be able to store my comics in there. I haven't put anything in there because I only have like the 4 comics at the moment, other than all my old stuff. And I could put my old stuff in here, maybe. I don't know. I think this is just going to be more for the new stuff, because all the old stuff has a place right now. And if I decide to keep going and buying more comics, then I kind of will stick with that. I mean, I guess I could start collecting Venom. I think I want to collect Venom in the trade paperbacks, though, at the moment. That's what I prefer, reading like 6, 7 issues at once. But yeah, I'm going to complete this run of House of X and Powers of X. I'll probably continue with X-Men by Hickman, starting with number 1, which is kind of exciting. And Absolute Carnage. At the moment, I'm only collecting the actual Absolute Carnage. Yeah, it is a pretty sweet box. I'm only collecting the actual main title called Absolute Carnage. I'm not collecting the tie-ins at the moment, but that might change, because there's quite a bit, though. I thought I had, maybe it was online. Because I had quickly taken a look at the very end of the book. And there's nothing. Oh, yeah. Here it is. So there's the August Carnage checklist. Oh, man. Do I want to get all of this? I don't know. That's a lot. Like, there's enough here maybe for an omnibus. So that's... I wanted to focus, and it's not doing it. Focus. That's all of August. So they have Absolute Carnage 1 and 2, and then all the tie-ins that are being affected by it. Same thing in September, October, and November. Right now, I'm just getting Absolute Carnage 1 to 6. Or Absolute Carnage 1 to 5. But then there's Venom 20. Maybe I should get Venom 20. Like, there's some of these that I could get. That would be kind of cool. They're going to have an Absolute Carnage versus Deadpool. Looks like all of Venom will have this. And potentially Amazing Spider-Man, by the looks of it. Starting with 17, 18, and 19. 17, 18, 19, and 20 of Venom are going to be included with Absolute Carnage. And then Amazing Spider-Man number 31. Is that the... No, 30 and 31. Then there's a bunch of different other things. There's a lot of Miles Morales that seems to be. Lethal Protector and Scream as well. Oh, Deadpool goes up to 3 issues as well. I don't know. We'll see. I first have to read Absolute Carnage and see if I actually enjoy it. But I could see myself potentially getting X-Men and Spider-Man. And what I was thinking of doing is maybe every week potentially having a live stream, or maybe every 2 weeks. Well, no, because once this run is all done, well, until Powers of X and House of X is done and Absolute Carnage is done, I'll probably do live streams each time that I get some issues, and I'll try to do it every week. Once that's done, then I think X-Men is going to be like every 2 to 3 weeks or something like that. So maybe I could also get Spider-Man, but that's the thing, I don't want to be going every week to get these comics, because there's no real, I have no reason to be going to that town other than to get the comics, and it's like to pick up 1 or 2 issues. I don't know. We'll see. So anyway, that's it, I think. Heads up, actually find the autofocus. That's what it does. Turn it off. So I shouldn't have the autofocus? That's what I was wondering. But then was the autofocus. Okay, hold on. I need to read up. I'm never going near a dog. I'm glad Carnage is a badass, and I think that's why you'd like this run, Kev. Well, okay, I haven't read it yet, so I don't know, but I think that you would. I assume that it's good stuff. But the autofocus, yeah, that was the only times where. How was it when I was showing? Every time that I looked like peaked and I was showing something, it seemed okay, but I'm not. It seemed okay to me. I'll probably have to rewatch this stream and see how it all did. I also don't know if I like how I kind of positioned everything. I feel like I'm kind of slanted at the moment, a little bit. I'm also not in the middle. Why am I not in the middle? There, now I'm in the middle. All right, that's good then. Yeah, I probably should turn that off, because every time if I move a little bit, it kind of shifts a bit. No, well, this was fun. I think that next time, I also want to do a live stream with Kevin and Jason, because we haven't done one in a really long time. And also just like Q&A live stream. That would be a lot of fun. Maybe next time, and also probably more video game centered, because I know the comic books isn't necessarily for everybody, but I'm just like so into it that I feel like I have to share like my love and passion for it at the moment, because I'm having so much fun with them. I'm actually going to be doing a review of the Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 1 from Stanley and Steve Ditko. So that's going to be coming out soon. Yes. Whoever recommended me this camera was spot on. And I looked at the, so this is the C920 and the C922. It seemed very similar. The only thing that was different was that it had 720p at 60 frames per second, whereas I can only go 30 frames per second at 1080p But I'd rather film in 1080p than 720p anyway. So even at 60 frames per second, I feel that you don't need to be seeing like how accurate this is. It's very rare that you're going to need to see the action that fast. So thanks, Kevin. And I think Jason recommended it too, because I think that's what you both have is the C920. All right, I'm going to end this live stream. So thank you all for watching. And next week, I don't know what's out next week. I didn't look. Maybe House of X 3? I don't know. Probably that's what it is. I don't know. Let's take a quick peek. No, Powers of X3. And then August 28th is House of X3, and I think Absolute Carnage 2 comes out at that point. I think. I could be wrong. All right. That's it. I'm all done. Thank you all for watching. You've been bearded in. I very much enjoyed doing this. I'm definitely going to do more of it. And a bunch of different topics. It won't just always be comics. So anyway, I'm going to end this. You've been bearded in. Beardage. Boop. Nope, that didn't do it. How do I end this? End stream down there. Boop. Oh my God, I have to press it again. Boop.